Okay, so basically, the patient happens to be a horse this time, but it's the same thing each time. It's the same, every time you see a patient, you always have the same sort of experience. So if the patient is a horse or a dog or a cat and needed belladonna or stramonium or whatever, your feeling towards the animal would be really clear. It'd be really,
He's listening to
it'd be
every
really-
word. He's hanging on.
It'd be
He loves
really,
this.
it'd be really threatening. It'd be really, I mean, you'd be scared. So, and the chief complaint of the horse is heaves. Heaves is, to my knowledge, used to be sort of the same thing as for human beings, COPD. So it's a kind of a reactive airway, starts off with some inflammation, and then if you can picture the bronchi, the lungs getting sort of increasingly filled with gunk, and eventually there's like fibrosis that happens, and it just gets harder and harder to breathe. And it's not too bad right now, because when it's really bad, the nostrils flare, just like that keynote of Lycopodium and Antimonium tartaricum, where they're flaring. And then there's also like mucus, like you would with allergic asthma, which is kind of close to what it's like, allergic asthma. And then when it's really bad, can you sort of move sideways?
Yeah.
So
Still see some.
the lungs are sort of here, and when there's sort of like a really intense breathing problem, there's something called a heave line.
You see a little indentation happening in him right here.
So with humans, there's like, you have to use all your accessory muscles, and you're like just using, I mean, you're really struggling. So usually it's like from, sorry honey, it's from here to here, like the more intense, the more line wise it is. But when it's really intense, you can almost see the ribs, and you can see the animal just really sucking in air. So give me 1 second.
Oh, I don't
All right.
see here at all.
So some of you, especially the ones that have no experience with horses, tell me anything that you want to tell me about this horse using the skills that we talked about. So this is observations, this is like just how does the horse look to you in terms of coat, and if it was a picture, and then video and all that stuff. And especially the thing you cannot say is, oh, I don't know if this is regular for horses or if this is like normal for, none of that matters. It's just what is your take on what's happening. And horses are primarily, the horse is designed perfectly for a bobcat to land right here and eat it. It has like absolutely no defenses. And because of that, its main defense is being with other horses and being sort of hyper skittish. That's like what they do, hyper skittish. So, and really they're designed to be sort of sweet in a way. And when they're not, you kind of see it, because they're like really intense and aggressive and like that. So is this like the aggressive, intense, kind of crazy? Is this like psycho?
No.
You know?
No, he's trying to
psycho
connect
horse?
with him.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so, and then tell me if the horse looks right to you. Now, some of you are gonna be like, well, I don't know. But what I mean by that is, some horses you'll see this sort of have fallen here. Like their whole spine sort of collapsed in a sort of great way. And then there's sometimes you see this thing where they're struggling so much, you can almost make believe they are on a boulder with all four legs sort of together, just trying to use their muscles. But is this a hyper? Is he sort of too laid back? Is he overly aggressive? Is he overly whatever? Just tell me anything you can about the horse.
He's super calm.
Very calm. Sweet.
Yeah, very subdued. Most horses I've encountered are a little more fussy, a little more active that I've seen. But
Yeah,
Yeah, he looks a little sleepy.
yeah. Is this like nighttime? Is it, did we wake up?
No, he was busy eating just now.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So the other thing about heaves is it's not clear like why some horses get it and other horses don't, but it's like it's like asthma. It's like allergic asthma. And so the thing that we do know is straw and hay and stuff like that makes it worse. And so pasture land is like better and being sort of in the wide. But if you're in Florida, for example,
So you see
That was
the
healthy.
liquid
yeah,
at the end?
yeah. What the heck was
It all
that?
comes back to poop.
The liquid?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been
Oh, wow.
a little bit more recently happening. And a week ago, he had straight up diarrhea, full liquid. That poop is somewhat normal, a little bit wet.
Yeah. It should be sort of like wet. It should be like a little bit drier, but that thing, that liquid at the end should not be there. So, no.
That's what I was wondering. Well, that is a tool for the job. I think we need one of those.
Just
It
wanna
doesn't
muck it
smell
up.
bad. Sometimes
No,
it'll smell,
yeah,
which,
yeah. What's it smell like?
especially when there's blood,
Yeah.
it'll just be like strong, like you know, normally horse poop's sort of just like a dull, not,
Do you get it? It's gonna come to you soon. So, oh yeah, so what I started to say before the whole mucking thing happened is, but in Florida, where the horses are sort of, there's some kind of bug, some kind of, it's not a parasite, something that's on the grass, and the animals in the springtime and summer wind up getting asthma from that. So it's not always just straw, or just hay. So you didn't say anything about the horse. Tell me anything.
He's solid. He looks healthy, solid, strong, stocky.
I was a little bit concerned.
Yeah.
Well, so let's just do it just like those skills. Ready?
You can
Picture.
say-
Make believe it's a picture. So describe the picture to me.
More syphilitic than psychotic or syphilitic.
It's not syphilitic.
Right.
Not syphilitic. But tell me about the coat. Tell me about the hair. Tell me, does it look? What does it look like?
Little doll.
Sit. Okay.
It's like a nice coat of hair, a little dry,
A little dry.
yeah, little dull. How old is he?
How old?
Yeah,
He's, I think, 28 now.
Looking good.
28 is like,
How long do they go usually? What's the
He's
life?
up there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's he like in terms of human being?
He's like, he thinks he's the mayor.
No, I mean, age-wise.
Oh, what's age? I'm like, let me tell you. So I mean, he's definitely considered senior. They'll live into their 30s, but that's like super old. So 28, for his breed and size and life is actually not, it's not like, you know, I think of him as like 70s, early
Yeah.
70s
Like the new
or something.
60.
And what is he?
He's a quarter horse. This is a real traditional, straight up quarter horse. Yeah.
So then you can, sometimes you can see just the just whole fur, just all sorts of stuff just falling off, which you don't see here. But there is a kind of like a,
He's shedding.
yeah, yeah.
Could give him a little,
Yoga.
hey. And if anybody needs to sit, by all means, you could sit right here,
Okay.
we could pull a chair.
So then, that's the sort of picture, and then if he was, you know, if you saw something, like you saw ulcers in the nose, or you saw, whatever it is, you'd just be describing that. Or if you were seeing the heat line, you'd describe that, or anything like that. Okay, so then make believe the horse hasn't spoken to you at all, and it just, the video, the audio is off, and you're just watching how the horse is moving. How would you describe the horse's movement? And I'll give you some clues, some language around that. For example, is there a lot of quick movement, a lot of jarring, unexpected kind of movement? Or is it sort of more laid back and slower and like that? Every time I touch him, not this time of course, but did you notice the sort of ticky twitchy stuff?
Yeah.
And just in general, how would you describe his movement? And here, if you're noticing him, oh, I forgot, the other thing about heaves is a lot of times they cough, just like cough variant asthma. So if he was coughing, you'd hear that. You'd also be able to hear, if this was really bad heaves, you could actually hear it like you hear asthma where there's like intense wheezing. You'd hear that. Because it's still, you know, trying to get a bunch of air through an ever thinner pipe. Alright, so just tell me anything
So
you
there's
can
like a
about-
big contrast between like a stillness and then a repetitive ticky movement.
Right. And then the sort of the ticky twitchy movement is also like what they do to relieve, well, I mean, it's some anxiety and stuff like that, but to relieve like the bugs on them, the mosquitoes, the
It just well, this looks not. Is it? I mean, it
No, I'm
looks
not
like a
saying-
very. I don't know. It's a head movement, so it doesn't seem like it's about.
Oh, that thing when he was going like that.
Yeah.
But he's not doing much of that. He's very subdued. He's
Mhm.
exerting his energy.
It's
He's
very
not-
it's like
Yeah.
calm, and
He's not shaking
then
his weight
the
around.
movement
Yeah.
happens,
See
and then
him right
Is he
now.
going to, is he
Yeah.
going to sleep? What's that?
This
Um,
is like not enough oxygen.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't like that.
So,
The only thing missing really is the pen here and the sweater.
Professorial horse.
No, just the sort of like conservative,
Yeah,
sort of like,
buttoned up.
He's progressive.
I'm not saying he's conservative, I'm not saying he's leaning towards the right, only he does seem to be leaning towards the right a little bit. Okay, alright, so now emotions. So I want just two kinds of emotions here. First of all, how do you feel about him? And then secondly, how do you think, if you were to go ahead and anthropomorphize, how would you think he feels? Does he seem aggressive or frightened or irritable or what? And so how do you feel about the horse?
Oh, we have company.
Worried
Not to be
and
outdone.
a little sad.
I think tired.
Tired and sad.
Yeah.
But I think he wants to
But
join
he's
us.
so
Wants to
sweet,
connect.
like he does
Yeah,
want
wants
to
to
connect.
connect.
He's very sweet.
Did you see that other horse? Did you see if there was a
Yeah.
horse there?
Yeah.
Did you notice the horse when he was over there? It's the same
Yeah.
horse. It was like, hey, what's going on here? He's like, all right,
A lot of
let me
attention
go
all of a
the- let me go the other way. Oh, camera, I don't want to be on camera.
she's totally like, yeah, she wouldn't want to be on like.
Yeah. So,
So he's like connecting, then all of a sudden it's like, he just droops a little bit.
yeah,
And it's like, even his eyelids get kind of heavy for a second, and then he kind of comes back,
yeah, yeah,
and then and that's happened several times.
yeah.
Mm.
I think he doesn't have enough oxygen.
Mm.
I think that's what it is. So, okay. All right, so all that stuff is in the background. All that stuff is in the background. And then you start asking questions. Tell me what's going on, tell me, and so we're gonna talk about heaves, but are we only gonna talk about heaves?
No.
All right, okay, so we're gonna go something along the lines of this. I know we're here to talk about heaves primarily, but I just wanna understand the general state of the whole animal, and then we'll come back to the heaves. So I'm just gonna ask you some general questions about the disposition of the animal, just going by systems, and then we'll come back to the respiratory thing.
What would any of that have to do with it? What do you mean? Just the focus.
It's 10 o'clock. Okay, so appetite, generally speaking, what's appetite like?
Big.
Big,
Loves eating.
loves eating, and what
We
does
all
he
do.
eat? What does he eat?
Family thing.
Yeah, totally. He loves eating, he mostly eats hay. And then in the summer, he eats a lot of grass. But because of the sugars and stuff, we hold off a bit on the grass. And then he also eats grain, and he gets a bunch of supplements, probiotic, flax, some more things. What?
What?
His ears went back when you said the flax. I don't
Do you
think he
like the
likes the
flax?
No, I do not.
I do not. Don't like
And,
flax.
and when I feed him, he gets a burst, and this is more lately, he gets a burst of energy right before each meal. He gets really irritable. He wants to chase the other horse. He's like, really just like, and sometimes if she's not around, he's just out there running. He rolls now it's almost every time before feeding. He has to roll just to like, I don't know, you know, and then he chills out right when he gets the food.
So this is as he's seeing you prepare everything? Like
Yep.
he knows it's what
Once it's
happened?
coming, yeah,
Okay.
right.
Meaning that he's excited to, I didn't see, so I don't know what it's like. Does he seem particularly happy at the moment, or
He's
is
really impatient
impatient
Oh.
to get the food?
to get that food, and I
Oh.
now have to do something with hot water, so it takes 15 minutes. So that 15 minutes is like way too. He's impatient. He'll paw. He'll stand over here and be like looking at me. I'll smile at him. He's like right, yeah. And then he gets pissed and runs out because it took too long.
And how pissed will he be? Will he try to hurt you? Will he try
Not
to
me
actually,
ever.
Will he try to hurt the other horse?
Absolutely. But she's quick.
Yeah.
And not like he's going after her for blood. He chases her though pretty aggressively in that moment.
All right. So then, eating. Any problems with the whole digestive system? Tell me
So-
the diarrhea thing. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, he's in general his poop is normal and his digestive system's been okay, but a week ago he had a really acute sort of flare up of this asthma heaves thing, where sort of for at least 36 hours every single breath the nostrils were full on, and anyway the next day
Full on, you mean flaring?
Yeah.
Open?
Yep, full
Was there
flaring.
Was there mucus or
He was coughing a ton. He would lick his lips after he coughed, so then I felt like that was mucus. There was a couple times white, thick mucus. This is him also sort of just wanting
Impatient.
to like
Yeah.
eat and stuff.
Yeah.
The next day, after some medication and whatever, he had straight up diarrhea. But also, it came when the weather got cold. And a month ago, he also got diarrhea once, right after he was outside when it was like warm, and then it got really cold and the wind, like a sudden drop in temperature.
And then what do you mean by diarrhea?
So instead of like that, which is kind of loose, it was like pure liquid. His tail was wet. There's like staining on his, and this time a week ago, it seemed really painful. He like, every time he did it, he like went forward and sort of hunched himself a little bit. He was still eating. It's rare that he will stop eating. So it was scary, because I was worried it was gonna go into colic stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. And then, all right, was there blood, mucus?
no
in this
blood.
stuff? Okay. All right, any urinary stuff going on?
No, that's been okay. And he drinks a lot, but he's always drink a lot.
Yeah. And then, so diarrhea is like sometimes it just sort of comes out of the horse and sometimes it just sort of shoots out and,
Right. So it did a little bit shoot out. Like the back of this door got stained a little bit.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then it started to get normal through the night.
Yeah. Any bleeding, anything? Nosebleeds or?
He's never, no bleeding.
Or any
he's not-
any musculoskeletal, anything?
No, not so much. He had a slight laminitis episode a year ago. And ever since then, because he's twice now had the tick disease, anaplasmosis. This past fall and the fall before, that upset, gave him some diarrhea, some appetite stuff, and then some later, this laminitis, which is a disease sort of in the hoof. And then since
So
then,
what is it?
what?
What is it?
All right, Abby, help me out.
I know.
So laminitis,
Wait.
don't help me.
No. Oh,
So let's see, it's one of the big deadly diseases that everyone's afraid of with horses, and it is connected to digestion, and it's in their hoofs, and basically has to do with laminae, which get stretched, which is like a membrane, but I don't know totally the science, if it's like, actually that calendar right there, I have a picture of it.
Wait a minute.
I'm trying to cheat
just
here.
like this? All right, let me help out.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me help out. So the lamina, like down there, it's like, it's this thing that we don't really have, kind of like nails, if you would, kind of like the last part. And for the best of all ways to think about it, which doesn't make sense, but trust me on this, it's the blood vessels sort of open up and close, just like the lungs do. There's something like that that's happening there. And whereas people get pre-diabetic, what do you call that? Metabolic syndrome, and then we become diabetic, horses develop laminitis. And so for the longest time, there was a question of how do you treat this thing? And what they realized in England primarily is in this country, we feed them a lot of grain and stuff. But in England, they just have them grow out there and, with the grasses and stuff. And the rates of laminitis is very, very different. And they realized, wait a minute, the thing we should do is just like, how about a little less grains? It's just whatever you know for diabetes, it's the
Right.
same thing. And so it's in a way, treating a horse or living with a horse to prevent diabetes, that's what you do to prevent laminitis.
So horses shouldn't be kept in stalls like they used to be. They used to be moving all the time.
Horses should be meant to be running on the beaches
Free
in
range
large droves
horses.
with you having drinks of champagne, watching the whole thing.
So he lives this way without the champagne, but out all the time.
Yeah.
And so since then, he's had wandering warmth amongst all his hooves, but not laminitis, and it's a thing. The blacksmith farrier's like, whoa, seems like it's laminitis, but it hasn't been. So he definitely has warmth, and it shifts between all four hooves.
It's not really it's the thing about a horse is it's gotta be up. Once the horse goes down, it's very hard for it to come back up. So that's why like colic is a big thing. Once the horse is down, it's just a bad thing. So laminitis is the same thing. It needs all its legs to do its life.
Yeah, like these should be cold, and it's a little bit warm.
Yeah. So this is the point where I usually slap my hands together really loudly to see what happens with the horse. Anybody? Oh. So it's not like incredibly anxious, fearful. It's not like a jittery kind of horse where it's like rearing and just like that. All right, so musculoskeletal, anything else in terms of musculoskeletal kind of stuff?
I think that's pretty much for that.
Okay. Eyes and teeth and
So we had a
all
big
that is-
eye thing. He had surgery on this eye a few years ago. He got fungal abscess, keratitis stuff, and so he's really, really, really sensitive to things. And so a lot of horses will get just like a little gunk in the eye, like conjunctivitis type of vibe, and you put the standard Western thing is you put triple antibiotic ointment on it for a couple days, it goes away, you're all good. We did that with him, and he had an allergic reaction. I didn't realize that's what was happening. Every vet's like, I've never heard of any horse ever being allergic. A few months later, it just, anyway. So that happened with his eyes, but he's had a good recovery, but he wears masks most of the time when he's outside to just keep things good.
So the surgery was like 4.5 years ago. I don't know if that's.
And so that's with the eye.
So, when you said allergic, what did it look like?
So, when we put the stuff in, basically it caused swelling, redness, and pain,
And gum.
and tear. Well, it dried up eventually, and we were doing artificial tears a lot. But yeah, some clear discharge. Say again.
What was the surgery?
It was to take a flap of, it was like a corneal flap thing where they took it and moved it, and then this vein that, or little artery guy coming down there, they like moved that there to like feed it. And he kept his eye and he kept his vision. And this eye was also bad, and it all, it was fungal, so it was crazy for months. Every 4 hours he had an IV, like a direct sewn in drip, and we were doing all this antifungal stuff. This is very before homeopathy world for me, and but we made it through. We kind of beat the odds, and and then his eyes were okay. When you're ready, there is a neuro thing too. Well, and I'll just say also on the sensitiveness, he's like when we give him a sedative, he's like a very quick drunk, like crazy quick.
Like how, what do you mean?
Like you barely have to give, like vets will often give them a sedative to work on their teeth or whatever so that they don't injure the vet or themselves. So he was like, he could barely stand up, and horses will stand no matter. So he didn't fall over, but it took him longer to recover from it, and he was like way more wobbly than usual. And then when he had the eye surgery, he had trouble waking up from general anesthesia. So it took 3 times, and that was a whole thing. So yeah, and then another example of the openness is just that, or allergic to everything. With the heaves, this asthma, I've given him Western medicine stuff, and then he had a reaction to clenbuterol. Yeah, clenbuterol, which is again this thing that no horse ever has any reaction to, and his reaction to that was full body sweats. The breathing it helped the breathing, but like his whole body just started sweating. So scared about that, you know, but it's sort of like considered this thing when they have acute asthma attack to do that, and I don't want to do that because I don't know what that could lead to if it's a full. That's happened twice. So eventually I did turn to homeopathy, but I don't know if I should tell
Yeah,
that part
yeah.
now. Okay.
Wait, you start to say neuro?
Yeah, so now this isn't the big new thing, is that he's now doing a head tilting, twitching thing. It's happening around 11 in the morning or on a sunny day. At first I thought it was triggered by light, but I've seen it on cloudy days a couple times, but much more sunny, where he's like, seems like he's falling asleep, but he's not. He's relaxing, and it's always to the left, and I have videos of it too, but where he's twitching to the left. And it's not subtle, and I had the vet come out and do like a neuro test, and he passed everything. He knows where his feet are, he's moving, you know, no other neuro signs. So that's happening just over.
What did the vet think it was?
The vet, actually, this very Western vet, Doc Hess and those folks, suggested maybe it's the tri-something nerve right here. Yep. And
Wow, it's almost like we were talking about that today.
right.
Yeah.
Right, and to do acupuncture, to try acupuncture on it, which I did, but then the acupuncturist came and was like, I don't see any sensitive or tenderness around it, and so, I don't know.
No congestion, no gunk in the ears or anything like that?
Not in his ears, and not in his eyes. His eyes water a little bit when it's windy. But again, I think his eyes are kind of vulnerable after surgery a few years ago. So.
What about his teeth?
His teeth are, I think, normal for his age, but they're getting worn, is basically what's going on. And so he has trouble grinding fully the way they need to, but he's on his way to more issues with that, but I think it's normal.
So speaking of homeopathy,
So with the asthma heaves, and once he was allergic to everything that the doctor said, they could, you know, and they just said you just have to give more and more of it, and there's no other answers, and that's that. I found this, okay, so that right there, where he was just pissed that I touched him. It's like, normally, that's like not his deal. So when he's not feeling good, or he's like gets in one of these almost ticky twitchy states or whatever, or when he had a fever from the tick, he does that. He's like, doesn't want to be touched. Normally, he's like all about the touch. So anyway, I found a homeopath who took his case over the phone and prescribed phosphorus. Well, first prescribed what was that actually? It was like a small one. But anyway, the phosphorus ended up tremendously helping him and helped the cough, helped the heaves. The heaves were there, but way chiller. Everything was good for a while. The cough pretty much went away.
How long ago?
So that was 3 years ago?
3 summers ago.
3 seasons ago. Yeah. And then last year we were okay, similar scenario. And then it's bad again. In February he had on like the hot day. It's, you know, it was bad. And right now, so I called that same, because I'm in this moment of transition with like whether I can do this myself or I need to trust somebody who's not coming from a cycles and segments perspective. And so anyway, so we just gave him lycopodium a week ago during the acute.
wait, had you repeated the phosphorus first? Or
I gave him the phosphorus in February when,
February, like a couple of months ago?
yeah, when he had like a total flare up. And when he's having the flare up, his sides are going, it sounds like he's like Darth Vader. Like you can hear from across and when you put on his out breaths and you put your ear up, it's like totally wheezing from his nostrils. And he's also been yawning more lately. But So I did try the phosphorus, and it didn't seem to help. It certainly didn't help right away, and I couldn't tell if like maybe it made the rest of February and March better or not. But it didn't help during the actual flare up, which is what made me feel like. And then the neuro thing had started, so I didn't. Yeah.
So then he gave lycopodium.
Yeah, and then when the acupuncturist was here, he was feeling a lot of sensitivity on the right side, and so I gave him that in the midst of the acute a week ago, and did not see an improvement in the midst of it. But the fact that he was bad earlier today and this is much better, I don't know, if that's the effects of that or what. I mean.
But if he's much better, because of the remedy or not because of the remedy, what do you do?
Wait.
It's a weight situation, but you also want to figure out what the next remedy might be if it's not lycopodium.
Because tomorrow, it's
It
going
could
to
just
get
be
warm,
that.
and it's going to be
Yeah.
warmer than today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in temperament-wise, what's he like usually?
So he's a total sweetheart. He's very into people. He likes to be the boss of the other horses, but likes the other horses in general. He's like a gentle boss, except for those moments right before dinner. And he's very curious. He's like, if anytime I put something out there, he wants to go check it out. He's messy. He's like poops wherever, whereas this other horse, she poops only in specific spots and piles. So he's kind of like, he's up for anything. Ever since moving up here 5-6 years ago, it's been a real life change for him. He was stuck in a small barn and stall living, and now we do adventuring together.
So
and
he used to be in a condo in New York or something.
he
and
did.
now-
It was actually a really fancy,
and
nice
now
little
he's like-
barn.
and now he's like,
I was roughing it out here. Yeah.
He'll particularly on weekends when we don't wake up as early, like he'll cry out
for food.
Yeah,
For food.
yeah, for food. Like he'll unless we give something that's gonna last through the night to through the morning, he'll be like, where the heck are you?
And
Okay. What kind of things scare him?
yeah, good question. It's just interesting. I'm seeing that twitchiness. So what scares him? He tends to go towards stuff. I mean, an animal, a deer or coyotes or whatever. He'll run from that stuff, like animals outside that are making sounds or noise or whatever. He'll get scared if we come around the corner. He wasn't expecting us. I mean, I don't think of him as fearless. I'm just having trouble thinking
The
of him.
dark,
He'll be surprised.
other horses, or just being he startles easily.
He gets
He
startled.
definitely
Yeah,
startles.
yeah. Lightning.
He'll run with lightning. It's hard to know if it's fear or not. But to be honest, if there's good food inside and it's lightning out, the food will win over,
Yeah.
whereas the other horse will run.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. And he himself seems to be chilly or warm. I understand that the lungs are worse than the heat, but he
Right.
himself.
He seeks warmth. He seeks sun, until it's too hot. So after cold winter nights, he is not whinnying for us to wake up. He's over there where the first sunlight hits, and then he's just relaxing in the warmth. So, and when it's windier, crappy weather, rain, actually any kind of bad weather, he prefers to come in. The horses can choose when they go in and out here, so
Yeah.
so he prefers to come in. And so I think he's chilly.
Mhm.
Yeah. But the real heat definitely bothers him as well.
Okay. All right. Let's. So it's a weight situation because of being better with the lycopodium recently, but we're gonna try to find a remedy for him. Good exercise for everybody for tonight. If the lycopodium doesn't work, And it's gonna be just the symptoms that you saw. If I asked you for the look he has right now, what term would you describe? What symptom? That expression on the face?
Almost resignation.
Yeah, I was gonna use the word stoic.
Stoic.
Yeah. You saw the other horse come in. That's like a not stoic horse. It's like, hey, what's going on? What's up? Bro, what's going on? What's you know, nothing happening here.
Stoic better.
Wait, maybe something's happening now. Let me just check this out. This horse is kind of more
This is like
stoic.
a tired stoic.
But yeah, I'm not saying why. I think the stoicism is from lack of oxygen. But there is a kind of a stoicism to him. So that is something you would take into your consideration. And so if the remedy choice was between stramonium and nature mirror, you'd pick nature mirror.
Totally.
And I will, the only other thing, fear,
Yeah.
I guess, or a reaction with him is, when he gets left alone, he gets really upset. He.
How do you know he's upset?
So he's endlessly calling out, first of all. He's just whinnying, like high-pitched whinnying. He's running everywhere. So now with the breathing, if the other person takes the horse out, I'm like shutting him in stalls or whatever to stop him from running so much. And he does not want food. Nothing will distract him.
Wait a minute. He won't have food if the other horse is gone?
He'll take a couple bites,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't do it enough. Grass, which is brand new, shiny right now, we've used that a few times,
Right.
and that will win, actually.
So and when he's winning and just sort of running around, he's running towards where
He's
the
looking
horse?
for her. He doesn't
He's
know where
looking
she
for her.
is, where they're gonna come
Okay.
back from,
Yeah.
and like going, like, high alert, eyes are huge, you know.
Yeah,
I feel like buck rear little.
Yep.
yeah, okay, yeah. What is that?
I mean, they're herd animals, and so there is this thing where we only have 2 horses here, and so leaving him alone, it's his herd leaving. So I think
I mean, she does it also.
she does it too when he leaves, which is part of what she's like, you're not going anywhere, are you? So I think that's it, but it's pretty, yeah, I think horses do it to different levels
Right.
or whatever.
But when you see it in him, he seems concerned for where she is. He seems concerned for him being alone. He seems irritable. He seems what?
Not irritable. It's a good question, concerned for himself versus her.
I think he's concerned about, like, I think he's worried